Hi, I'm Howard from Crazy Tech. I've uploaded 2 chapters from Casinos in Space that's on my science fiction theater channel. That's my serialized novel about traveling on a starship to resort planets. And if you like what you hear, please leave some comments and go to Science Fiction Theater Casinos in Space and subscribe. Thanks very much.
Casinos in Space by Howard Barenbaum. Copyright 2019 by Howard Barenbaum/Cybertimes LLC. All rights reserved. Chapter 2. You Can Count on Me. As they entered the elevator for a ride back to their rooms, Paul was happily counting his winnings. He was still a little fuzzy about Slim and what had actually happened, but he didn't care. He already decided that he was going to treat everyone for drinks and also buy gifts at the gift shop. He had never been much of a gambler, until now. The bug had hit him, but in an unusual way. He remembered going to a Detroit casino with Barry a few times, but mainly for the food, not gambling. He wouldn't waste a dime in any of those noisy video robbers, he called them, or sit at a table with strangers. But that had all changed after he met his friend Slim. "Well, Paul," Barry said, "I must say that you're doing well these days. Maybe you'll have to teach me what you know about craps. I've always been fascinated by the game, but never had the guts to play it." "I can't help you, Barry," Paul answered. "You'll have to consult with Slim." "I'm confused," Mark said. "Now, who is this Slim person?" Paul explained what had happened, and everyone listened, but no one really believed him. "He just appeared from nowhere and forced me to play craps," Paul explained. "And I won." "I believe you," Barry said. He worried that Paul was headed for another nervous breakdown. They couldn't afford to have Paul ill again, especially if they were billions of miles away from home. "Okay, guys," Paul said as they reached their rooms, "tomorrow, drinks are on me, or maybe today sometime later. Now, I'm taking a gift shop break and bringing back everyone snacks, teas and whiskeys." "You mean the drinks are on the casino," Mark said. "Why don't we have drinks in the Sphinx?" Barry said with a chuckle. "That's cute, Barry," Susan said with a grin. "You can have drinks anywhere your heart desires, partner," Paul said. A message on the video display interrupted their conversation, announcing the Las Vegas departure for the vegan system at 2300 hours. Though the effects of acceleration and leaving Earth's gravitational pull would be minimal, they were warned to stay in their rooms to avert any possible complications. "Hey, men," Mark said. "Why don't we go up to the bridge tonight? I'm sure we can talk them into letting us observe our departure." "Great idea," Barry said. "But we'll need clearance." "Not a problem," Mark said. "I'm sure we're in their database. Don't forget to bring your identification cards." The men met in the lobby at 10:35 p.m., but without their wives. Susan, Jane and Elena planned an early morning aerobics class, then to the spa to relax, so they were in bed by 10 p.m. "It's boys' night out," Barry said. "I can't believe the women already signed up for a morning exercise class." "Early to rise for exercise," Mark added. "That is a true statement," Paul said stiffly. It was 10:45 p.m. when Mark, Barry and Paul exited the monorail at Caesar's Palace on the second level. It was a busy night. The tables were crowded, slot machines were ringing and clanging their payoff songs, and cigarette smoke filled the air. They exited the hotel lobby and started walking toward the front of the ship. It was like any typical night on the Strip. The lights glowed and flashed in the distance as an artificial night breeze gently pushed them forward. It was 10:50 p.m. when they reached the restricted area leading to the bridge and control room. "Halt," the armed guard demanded as the men reached their destination. "Passengers are not allowed here. Go back to your stateroom." Paul, startled by the guard, turned around, but Barry placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Get your IDs out, guys. We're allowed to be here." "We are cleared here, sir," Mark said. "We will check out okay." The guard looked at the men suspiciously, but accepted their identification cards, and then turned to a computer terminal for just a minute. Sorry for the inconvenience I may have caused, gentlemen. Yes, you are cleared. He looked surprised. First, put these badges on, and then go right ahead. It was 10:58 p.m. when Paul, Mark, and Barry stepped off the elevator and entered onto the bridge. They were just in time. The crew was busy in the final stages of engine startup initialization, so they went unnoticed for the moment. I am amazed at what they have done with our space drive, Paul said. Me too, Barry whispered. Quiet, Mark interrupted. Look, it's happening. Suddenly, there was complete silence and everyone was looking toward the bridge's front portal. It was 10:59 p.m., and the countdown for the jump was in progress. The room darkened and thousands of stars were visible. Computer screens on every terminal displayed the countdown as the ship's engines built up to the correct field strength for departure. It was the first of 4 faster-than-light-speed jumps before they reached the vegan system in the constellation, Vega, their final destination. Total time required for the trip was 1 week, or 4 space jumps, with time in between for power rejuvenation. That was the best they could do with the current technology. In the future, they hoped that the same trip would take only 1 day. At exactly 11 p.m., what they saw through the forward portal was amazing. As the engines generated their familiar humming sound with only slight noticeable vibrations, the stars expanded from pinpoints of light to large ellipses, and then collapsed into elliptical pinpoints for a moment. The process repeated for several minutes as the spacecraft and passengers gently soared from Earth and into the depths of the Milky Way. Good evening, gentlemen, Captain West said as he approached the visitors. We really enjoyed the show, Barry said. I'm Barry Cohen, Captain. Thanks for having us on the bridge. It's our pleasure, Dr. Cohen, he said. As you know, it's your space drive that powers the Las Vegas. I would love to look around the control room, Mark said. The ship is way beyond the size we envisioned for use with our drives. I am very impressed. The Pentagon really took our idea and ran with it, Barry said with a smile, and then noticed Paul wandering on his own toward the exit. Excuse me, Captain, Barry said as he watched Paul approach the elevator. Thanks for the tour. But we've got to go. It's late and our wives will be missing us. Well then, I'm sorry we couldn't talk more, Captain West said. Please come again. Barry grabbed at Mark's coat with such a force that he almost knocked him down. Paul is acting strange. I saw him talking to himself. We can't leave him alone. It looks like he's headed for a breakdown. Or the door, Mark said with a chuckle. It's not very funny. Unfortunately, it was too late to catch Paul. As they reached the elevator, the doors were closing, and they could just get a glimpse of him. His head was turned and his mouth moving, as if he was talking to someone. They tried to call to him to stop the elevator and open the door, but either he didn't hear them or refused to respond. It's not like Paul to run off on his own, Barry said. Let's hope he goes directly back to his room. If history repeats itself, Mark said. I bet that he's on his way to a casino. He paused. But which casino, that is the question. I'd say, back to the Mirage, Barry answered. That's where he won his $900. Paul was not surprised to see Slim. In fact, he was looking forward to learning more about gambling from the old-timer. He didn't care if it was an entity, or ghost or something from his own imagination, like a giant invisible rabbit named Harvey. He was on a long-needed vacation, and he was going to enjoy himself, no matter. Howdy, partner, Slim said. Long time no see. It had only been a few hours. Oh, hello, Paul said with a big grin. Ready for another lesson in winning, boy? I'd like that, Paul said. But aren't the casinos closed for the departure? Why, yes and no, boy, Slim returned. They are closed until 11:30 p.m., and it's just about that time now. Let's hop onto their rail car, so we can make it for the reopening. And I know a nice quiet table at the dunes, in the aft of this tin can, where we can play a nice quiet game of single-deck blackjack. And you can count on me to help you walk away a winning cowboy. Paul chuckled to himself, thinking that if his subconscious had invented Slim, it must have used Barry's image because it was coming up with ridiculous puns, a trademark of Barry Cohen. Are you ready, partner? Slim asked, interrupting Paul's thoughts. Yes. I'm ready to win, partner. Paul thought he'd play along for fun. They exited the monorail at the dunes. It was almost empty, except for a few people at the slot machines, and a few more at blackjack tables. It was quiet, and there was no cigarette smoke in the air. It was a perfect time for gambling, Paul thought as he followed Slim toward the rear of the casino, where a row of single-deck blackjack tables resided. Sit down and make yourself at home, Slim said. Let's lasso the bull by the horns, here, and that's no bull. Place your bet, the dealer said as he shuffled the deck. Paul looked at Slim for advice. Take $100 and bet it on the first hand, Slim said. It may not be scientific, but you're likely to win first time out. Then, let's play with their money. Paul did what Slim said and placed a $100 bill on the table. Do you want change, sir? The dealer asked. No, that's my bet. The dealer dealt the cards, with an ace showing. Paul had a 10 and a queen. Insurance? The dealer asked. Slim responded saying, I never much liked insurance. It's a waste of money. No, thank you, Paul said. The dealer turned over his card and revealed another ace. He then proceeded to deal himself a queen and a 10. Busted, he said. Paul was happily grinning. He was now $100 ahead. It was a nice private game of blackjack, without interruptions, except for the waitress bringing Paul drinks. Then, after 15 minutes of betting $100 a hand, and downing 4 double shots of a synthesized Russian vodka, Paul was again ahead $900 and very much relaxed. He was so relaxed that he flirted with the waitress, which was not like him at all. Let's get going, boy, Slim said. Take your winnings and run. I know a place around here where you can spend it. And I think you'll like it. Lots of topless cowgirls to wrestle, and it's more fun than hog-tying a steer. They left the casino and walked a block toward the aft area of the ship, near the entry hatch. Stopping just short of the hatch, they followed a stairway 2 flights down to a dimly lit corridor that served as a maintenance area for the monorail system. When Slim reached the bottom of the stairs, he turned right and motioned for Paul to follow. They walked several minutes, following the curve of the monorail tracks. After passing several steel doors identified only by large yellow numbers, Slim stopped at one, taking a closer look. Yep, he said, this is it. Why don't you bang on the door, boy? Paul followed Slim's command, and after several seconds, the door opened. A large, dark-haired man stared threateningly at Paul and said, What's the password, buddy? They could hear loud music and people laughing inside. A strong stale odor from cigarette smoke reached Paul and passed into the corridor. Paul looked at Slim for an answer and Slim said, Eat grits. Eat grits? Paul whispered back. What kind of password is that? Who are you talking to, buddy? The man asked. Just give me the password. I don't have all night. It's eat grits. The man paused for a moment and then said with a grin, Well, why didn't you say so in the first place? Come on in. Next, a scantily dressed woman greeted Paul. She looked him up and down, and then motioned for him to follow. She led him through the crowded bar, and to a couch near the stage. He could see 3 beautiful young women gyrating completely nude to the music that blared intolerably. Red, blue and green spotlights illuminated the dancers, their tricolor rays now visible in the smoke-filled air. When Paul sat down, 2 women, one blonde and another brunette, sat beside him. They were completely topless. Hello, Paul said shyly. Hi, the women said simultaneously. We're yours, honey, the brunette said loudly. And by the way, I'm Belinda, and that's Tina. What's your pleasure? I'm Paul, he said nervously. Nice to meet you. He then looked around the room for Slim, but couldn't find him. Belinda stood up and turned towards Paul, brushing her right breast on his cheek, and said with a wink, I'll be right back, honey. Want something to drink? No thank you, Paul said, blushing. I've had enough for the night. But go ahead and get drinks for yourself and, Tina. My treat. Well, thank you dear, Tina said, and then she kissed him on the lips. Paul blushed again, and then said, please don't do that. I'm married. He waved his wedding band in her face, but she grabbed his hand and pulled it to her breasts. The effects of the vodka were lessening, and he realized that he shouldn't be at the bar. He had to leave, he thought. So what? Tina said. We won't tell. A few minutes passed, and then Belinda returned with the drinks. Thank you dear, she said. The waitress will be over in a little while to collect for the drinks. Well, thank you very much for your fine company, girls, he said nervously, but I really must go now. My wife must be worried about me as it's getting very late. So, thank you very much again for the company. He stood up and tried to locate the entrance. Oh no, Belinda said as she stroked his leg. We are very sorry to see you go. But do come again, please. Just then, the waitress came over and handed Paul the bill. What? He said. $900? This can't be. If he wasn't sober a minute ago, he was completely sober after reading the bill. After several kisses from Belinda and Tina, followed by threats of bodily harm by two large bouncers, Paul paid the $900, and then he was thrown out. Slim suddenly appeared in the corridor next to Paul. What's the matter, partner? Didn't I say you'd have one fine time? I saw you wrestling with those two cuties. Oh, yes, you're right, Paul answered, sounding disgusted. I'm going home. Good night. I'm planning a nice game of roulette for you next time, partner, Slim said as Paul walked away. See you soon. Casinos in Space. By Howard Barenbaum. Copyright 2019 by Howard Barenbaum/Cybertimes LLC. All rights reserved. Chapter 3. Restless. It was 2 a.m. and Paul could barely keep his eyes open. He sat dozing in and out of a restless sleep, as the monorail raced toward the Mirage Hotel and Casino. He dreamt of a life and death struggle with enemy agents for a secret invention. He dreamt of the entity, Slim, from old Las Vegas, who was helping him win at the tables. He dreamt of Brenda and Tina, and the nude dancer in the private bar in the aft of the Las Vegas. He dreamt of the bouncer who threw him out when he complained that $900 was too expensive for 2 mixed drinks. He dreamt of Jane, his wife, and his friends with him on his vacation. Then he awoke feeling ill and full of guilt and sadness. Mirage Hotel and Casino, the computer said loudly. Please exit when the door opens. Paul, startled by the announcement, jumped up and hit his head on the rail above. Ouch, he said. The top of his head started hurting, which added to a headache caused by the 4 vodkas he drank earlier, while playing blackjack. A pain shot through his right shoulder, reminding him of the humiliation and hurt caused by being thrown out of the bar. Where was Slim, he thought as he waited for the monorail door to open. Or was there really such a person? Could he have imagined this old-time gambler? Was he having another nervous breakdown? His hands began to tremble. I can't be having a breakdown, he said loudly, the sound echoing throughout the empty monorail car as the door opened. I'm not sick anymore, he mumbled as he exited the car. Slim is a real person. As he dragged his body toward the elevator, he was agonizing on what to tell Jane. He could explain his late hours with Slim, but feared her reactions to his cavorting with other women in a bar. Mark and Barry would find his story ridiculously funny, and laugh at his paying $450 for a drink. Then they'd turn around and ask for directions to the private bar, so they could sneak off and see for themselves. Barry would never let him hear the end of it. He'd make up a stupid joke, and then laugh to himself even if no one else thought it was funny. He was not looking forward to that. Paul found his way back to his room, quietly undressed, and then slipped into bed next to the sleeping woman he loved. He forced himself to put aside all thoughts of the evening, and fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, after an enormous breakfast buffet, the group, without Paul and Jane who decided to sleep in, strolled into the Luxor casino to gamble. It was just after 9 a.m., though they wouldn't have known it by the crowd. It could have been any time, night or day. Casinos have a way of freezing time. You could gamble all night and sleep all day. You could eat breakfast at the dinner hour or dinner at midnight. You could drink their complimentary drinks 24 hours a day, if you desired. Elena and Susan wandered over to an empty, non-smoking, blackjack table, while the men walked on to an occupied roulette wheel. As Mark and Barry approached the table, they observed the croupier stacking chips, while the players were covering the playing field with new, colored chips. One short, stocky man stood near the wheel waiting to place his bet. He had a notepad in his hand, and was keeping track of each spin. The croupier, holding the small white roulette ball between his thumb and index finger, flicked it onto the rim. As the ball took off, speeding almost invisibly around the wheel, the man placed a $100 bill on black. After several spins, the ball began to slow, and then teetered on the edge ready to fall onto the gently spinning wheel. 00, the croupier said. No winners. Damn, the stocky player said as the chips were swept from the table. The other players began placing their bets. This time, some chips covered the green 0 and 00. After all players finished placing their bets, the croupier picked up the ball and shot it around the rim again. The stocky man watched the ball for a moment, and then quickly placed a $100 bill on black. After several trips around the rim, the ball slowed, and then dived directly onto the green 00. Two women, who bet 00, screamed happily. See, Wanda, numbers repeat, one woman said as she collected her chips. The stocky man frowned and said, damn. I agree with the woman, Barry said to Mark. Numbers do repeat. He opened his wallet and pulled out a $100 bill. I'm ready to bet, he said as he placed the bill on the table. I'd like $5 chips. After the croupier zipped the ball around the rim, Barry quickly placed his bets. No more bets, please, the croupier said as the ball gradually lost speed and slowed until it fell onto the single green 00 once again. Yes. Barry exclaimed with a loud laugh. Great, Mark added. We won again, Wanda screamed. Damn it again, said the stocky man, losing $200. Barry picked up his winnings and then waited for the croupier to spin again. He bet $25 on 5 numbers and was ahead $150. He left his winning bet on the number and then waited for the croupier to spin before placing his next bet. As the ball slowed and entered the spinning wheel, it bounced around in and out of numbers before it came to rest on the wheel. Barry knew he was going to lose, and he did. The number was 32, nowhere near 00, his newly selected area. Can't win them all, Barry said. The croupier glanced up at him, making eye contact, and Barry smiled. What went wrong? Mark asked, looking concerned. It bounced, Barry said softly. It has to go in smoothly to give us a chance. Oh, yes, Mark responded. That makes sense. It was time for a croupier change, and a tall blonde woman, with long flowing hair partially covering her face, stepped in as the replacement. Then their luck changed. Most of the spins went in smoothly, aiding Barry's semi-scientific system. Barry and Mark were ahead almost $1,200 in 15 minutes, and they were attracting a crowd. The stocky man, who had been playing only black or red, was still losing. But he recovered somewhat when he decided to bet along with Barry. When they were over $2,000 ahead on their winning streak, Barry whispered to Mark, "We'd better start losing. I didn't realize we were going to attract attention." Mark nodded agreement, and they started to bet more money on the same numbers. This was a common practice for people with roulette systems. They would select 3 or 4 numbers, and then continue to bet large amounts until they won or lost. Barry had seen this system used when he was on a trip to Aruba, an island near South America. A man bet on 27, 28, 29 and 30 until he walked away with over $1,000. The next day, Barry saw the same man betting the same numbers, and again he was ahead $500. There was no way that he could continue winning if it was totally random. Something affected the wheel. The big winner was Jack from Rhode Island, who said he studied all the roulette wheels until he found one that looked like it was repeating numbers. In this case, the numbers 27, 28, 29, and 30 were up more often. He thought that it was a balance problem that helped numbers repeat. It sounded somewhat plausible to Barry, and in this case the method worked. Unfortunately, Barry didn't take into account good luck, and he won again after 2 spins. He was now ahead $2,500, but was sure that the system would give out, and it did. He was losing $200 a spin, now down $1,400. Fortunately, the crowds dispersed without suspecting that they had been winning beyond the laws of probability. They left $1,000 ahead, but not without arousing the suspicion of one person. It was the stocky man who was now following them as they stopped at the table where Susan and Elena were playing blackjack. A pile of chips and some drinks were on the green playing surface in front of them. No one noticed the man or his slight limp. Cards were flying across the crowded table as a new hand was beginning. The dealer was a woman, and she was doing well for herself and for the players. She had silver dollars and chips bulging from her 2 shirt pockets, now weighing her down. She was laughing and everyone was cheering as she dealt 2 blackjacks in a row. Susan and Elena were the recipients. She continued to deal to herself, and busted with a count of 24. After loading her overloaded pockets with more tips, she smiled at everyone, and then dealt another game. "You two seem to be doing well," Barry said. "I would say," Elena replied. "I am $300 ahead of myself." "I'm not doing badly either," Susan said. "We can't lose." "I'm up $400. This woman is a great dealer." "I'm just doing my job," the dealer said. "We don't mind that," Barry said. "And we're ahead too." They didn't notice that the stocky man taking a closer look. He stopped and stared at Barry, as if he knew something. When Barry looked up, the man scurried to the next table and sat down. "That bastard is doing something," Martin Landry muttered to himself as he placed a $100 chip in the wager box. The dealer dealt him a 10 and a 2. "Damn. Damn doesn't mean a thing to me," the dealer said. "What do you want to do, sir?" The dealer had a 10 showing. "Oh, sorry." "Go ahead and hit me." "Ace," the dealer announced. "Next time, please scrape your finger on the felt toward you. That's the proper way to request a card." "Hit me again," Martin said sheepishly, knowing he could bust with 13. But the dealer did not respond. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said and placed his hand on the table and motioned for a card. It was likely the dealer had 20, so he had to try. "Jack of spades," the dealer said. "Busted," Martin said, and thought, how can someone have dumb luck at roulette and win thousands, while someone skilled at blackjack loses for no logical reason? "It's unfair," he said out loud. Then he noticed Mark and Barry starting to leave and stood up to follow them. "Sorry, you're having bad luck," so the dealer said. "Better luck next time." As Martin moved away from his bad luck and into the aisle, he wasn't watching where he was going and collided with Mark and Barry. All 3 went down onto the carpet as the pit boss watched intently. Often, criminals use this approach for pickpocketing, but he didn't notice any wallets flying. "Oh, I am so sorry, gentlemen," Martin said. "I am a clumsy oaf. Please accept my apologies." He hadn't intended to meet them this way. "Can I buy you drinks at the pub? I'd like to make up for my clumsiness." Well, sure, Barry said, glancing at Mark. It's okay with me. We don't mind meeting new people, but this was a bit unusual. The Luxor bar was a very comfortable place with plush couches and high-back chairs, furniture following the Egyptian theme. It was not surprising the bar was quiet and empty when they entered, since drinks were only free while gambling. It was also a nice place to take a break from the noises and excitement of the casino, without going back to the hotel room. A large sign at the entrance announced that coffee was free for the asking, while alcoholic beverages were available for a modest fee. The air was cool and clean, void of the smell and taste of cigar and cigarette smoke of the casino. They could hear the soft strumming of a guitar from the other end of the room. The performer was on a lighted stage, while the rest of the room was darkened. It was a peaceful oasis in the simulated desert. The three sat down on a circular couch, an ornate engraved table in front of them. The waitress then appeared, dressed in Egyptian garb, to take their order. "I'll take a European beer, if you have it?" Barry asked. "I'll have the same," Mark said. "A martini for me," Martin Landry said. "So, what are you gentlemen doing on this starship?" "Well," Barry said, pausing. "We're on a long-needed gambling vacation." "That goes for me," Martin said. "I haven't gambled in years, and the opportunity to spend my money to make money, here in space, was something I had never done before. You see, I earn money the hard way. I invest in things that you wouldn't believe could make you a fortune." "We're college professors," Mark volunteered, but not really wanting to talk about himself or their company, the Hollow Exchange. The vacation was to get away from work, and he definitely didn't want to talk about it. "What about you, Martin?" Barry asked. "What do you invest in?" "Well, lately we're into recycling cemeteries. We build 9-hole and miniature golf courses above our departed loved ones. You might as well make some money on otherwise unusable property. Spend some time with your loved ones without getting bored. If you're interested in seeing our brochures, I brought a few with me. The bottom line is, it will only cost you $10,000 to invest in our limited partnership. We have a great proven return on investment. Believe it or not, break-even is only 2 years. "Oh, interesting," Barry said, not at all interested in investing, but not knowing what to say. "I heard there are some great golf courses in the vegan system. But I'm not sure about cemeteries." "I do intend to check them out when we arrive," Martin said. "I will leave no stone unturned." He paused and then laughed. "Very amusing," Mark said, but not amused. "Maybe we'll see you on the boardwalk on Vega 1? "Maybe you will," Martin said. Paul wandered almost aimlessly around the casino, partly trying to find Barry and Mark, and partly just to forget his fight with Jane. She was still fuming over the report of his encounter with the topless women. He walked by the bar not thinking that his friends would be there drinking, and strolled into the maze of multicolored and flashing gambling machines and green-top tables with smoking and drinking patrons winning and losing at dice and cards. As he was walking toward a crowded roulette table, a shimmering light appeared in his path. Suddenly, Slim's body formed and then solidified. Bracing himself for a collision, Paul walked right through the apparition. "Howdy, partner," Slim said, walking toward the roulette wheel. "Come over here, boy. We're going to win at roulette." Slim was standing next to the table as Paul approached. "I don't want to play roulette," Paul protested. "I don't want to play anything. I'm just looking for my friends." "Go away." Slim disappeared from where he stood, and the next second he was perched on top of the roulette wheel, balancing on one foot and rotating slowly. With each revolution, Paul could see his big grin. "It's easy and fun, and I'll let you win a sum," Slim said, laughing. "Get down from there," Paul said. "They're going to call security and take you away. No one can see me but you, little buddy. Now place your bets." "Goodbye," Paul said, and then turned and walked through the casino, looking back occasionally. After 10 minutes of wandering and passing several rows of electronic slot machines, Paul decided to take a chance. He stopped and found $3 in his pocket and dropped them into an unoccupied machine, each coin ringing a bell as it entered. He then pressed the spin button and the cherries and plums and oranges began to spin on the video screen. As the wheels stopped one by one, 3 oranges appeared along with electronic chimes and bells announcing that Paul had won. He pulled up a stool and sat down. With $100 he could play for a while, and with the casino's money. He looked around to check if Slim was nearby. Confident that he was alone, Paul pressed maximum bet on the machine for a relaxing game of slots without Slim or anyone else to bother him. He thought it was unusual to win so frequently on a slot machine, since it wasn't the best game to play, but he was hitting on every other spin. In no time he had accumulated over 2,000 credits, and was already humming the musical ditty that accompanied his wins, which sounded a little like It's a Small World from a Disney ride of the same name. It was addictive. After a long streak of losses, and then a longer streak of wins, he was getting hungry and thirsty. But he didn't want to leave his lucky machine, so he stopped a passing cocktail waitress. "Could I trouble you to bring me a pastrami sandwich on rye and a beer, please?" "I will gladly pay in advance for both the sandwich and the drink, miss." "Oh, not a problem, sir," the pretty waitress said. "I will have to charge you for the sandwich, but it's no charge for drinks while you're playing." "I don't mind paying, and I will pay in advance as I said." He handed her a $20 bill. "Thank you," she said. "I'll place your order as soon as I drop off this one drink. Be back soon." As she left, Paul caught the scent of her perfume, and it lingered as he continued to play. It seemed like he had been waiting hours when the waitress returned with his lunch. "Howdy, honey," she said. "And, no charge." Paul looked up and was startled to see Slim's head on the woman's body. "Oh," he said, jumping up, almost knocking down her tray. Then he looked again, and it was the face of the pretty woman who took his order. She looked startled. "Sorry," he said. "I thought you were someone else." He paused and then said, "Keep the change and thank you." "Well, thank you very much, sir," she said, and then kissed him on the cheek.